Yeah. David, how's your house coming?
It's coming. It's coming. They're putting up tile. The tile on the floor is down. We still need a roof, but the cabinets are half in. The countertop template guys have been out there, and a couple of weeks the countertops will be in. So I'm hoping soon.
You're ahead of me.
But I'm there every day, making sure that things are happening. And yeah, I've been lucky, relatively speaking. I can't complain.
Is there anything new on the insurance front, David, or is it pretty much the same story where the insurance companies are giving people a lot of difficulty?
I'm hearing that very few claims. Initially, right at the beginning, some insurance company were paying out claims. What I've been hearing lately is many of the owners are having to go through the appraisal or arbitration process in order to get a fair amount. So I went through the appraisal process with my wind insurance, and my understanding is now a number of homeowners on Captiva are about to go through the appraisal or arbitration process. It's different in different insurance companies in order to get something close to the damages that they've suffered. But lately, very few people are getting what they're entitled to without going through some secondary arbitration or appraisal.
Did you catch the news this morning on CBS where the Kona Kai lady had a skeleton in a chair out front, and she says, "I'm still waiting for my insurance check." I think Sanibel made him take it down, but she hit it up for a little while. I caught it on the news this morning. I thought it was pretty
I
cool.
didn't see that.
It was pretty
Yeah.
clever.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Jensen's, remember the skeleton waiting for Big Shrimp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same feeling.
Yeah.
We had a human remains call after the hurricane. Somebody said they found human bones by the post office. And upon close inspection, it said made in China. It was the skeleton that was riding the jet ski out in front of Jimmy's place. The guy said that the complainant said she sent a picture to her dad, who's a retired medical examiner, and he said she should call. I said, well, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble here, but
Well, piece of good news, I was just at the groundbreaking, and so in Habitat has partnered with the county and FEMA, and we have 58 families that are going to be moving in and go down Kelly Road. It has a separate entrance, and they'll have for about 18 months FEMA trailers.
Okay.
That'll help people.
Hello, Sandy. Good seeing you again.
All right, well, let's see. It's 9:03. I guess maybe we get started. Hopefully everyone's here. Welcome everyone to the May 9th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. We'll start off today with a roll call. So Jay Brown is here, David Mintz,
Is here.
Linda Laird,
Here.
Tony Lappy. I know Tony was here.
I'm here.
Okay, Sandy Stillwell. Sandy, I saw you somewhere.
Yep. I'm here.
John Jentz, or Ken Gill.
Here.
Morning, Ken. John Jensen. We've seen
Here, Jay. Yep.
Bruce McDonald.
Yep, I'm here, Jay.
Hi, Bruce.
Morning.
Ann Brady.
Morning.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
And then finally, Bob Walter.
Morning.
Hi, Bob. Well, we're all here. That's great.
Mhm.
First order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Can I have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Any discussion?
No,
Everybody satisfied with the minutes? All in favor? Aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay, well, let's, first off is our county overview with Commissioner Wayne. It's my understanding that Commissioner Wayne wants to attend this meeting for a few minutes, but he's out of town and in between meetings. And if he can make it, he'll call in.
He's here now, Jay.
Oh, he is. All right. Kevin, are you there? Kevin?
You're on mute, Kevin.
Kevin? Ken, is there anything you can do to help Kevin get in or?
I'm in.
Oh, you are. There you are. Kevin, thanks so much for kicking off our meeting. It's become your practice. I know you're on a very tight timetable this morning. Give us a brief update.
Sure. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate the opportunity. So obviously session has wrapped up. The budget's on the governor's desk right now. We obviously looks like to be a good session based on funding. But probably the more important thing that we've been asked to do going forward is submit a 5-year capital improvement project. What do we need to happen in the next 5 years? What are the things and what type of timeframes? So slot in what we think we could achieve in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. So that is what the legislature is looking for. Currently, right now, we're doing 16 town hall meetings to try to get an indication of what we potentially require, what the community requires for the potential grant that we've received from HUD of $1.1 billion. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, determined that our unmet need was $1.1 billion. We believe by the time we're done in submitting our action plan, that will demonstrate that we have an unmet need far greater than that. And I like to indicate to people that I think we're missing a zero, so more like 10 billion as opposed to 1 billion. We'll continue to advocate for that as we go through this process. It's been very helpful to go throughout the community as we go night to night to different parts of the community to interact and understand what the community is going through. That's an opportunity in front of us. We were awarded by verbal award by HUD. What takes place generally, Jan, for all the members is that you actually get an official letter. It is registered, and then you have 120 days from when you receive that letter. To date, we've gotten a verbal notification, but we have not gotten a letter. And then during our 120 days is where we will work with the community and what the community believes they need to submit in our action plan. And I believe our action plan will be so comprehensive that require billions and billions of dollars. And that's where we have an opportunity to demonstrate what our unmet need is, not basically what the federal government has indicated. So that's what's going on right now. I'm excited to work with the legislators during the off season to work with the community. Obviously, this panel, would love to see Sanibel and Captiva hook up from the sewer connection. We need to sit down with Sanibel, and I've reached out to Richard Johnson. We will start to talk about what they're missing right now. I know that a lot of their transmission lines were affected by the storm. There's certain funding that we've had done in this session and want to make sure that we obviously address what that is. We'll have an opportunity to sit down and go over what transmission lines need to be, fixed and or repaired. It's
Kevin,
quite
I'd heard that they were awarded 30 million or something like that.
that's what we've been told. Again, we haven't gotten the final estimates. Jay, when we tried to put this together for the legislators, we did the best we could based on what estimates we had. I don't know if that 30 million is enough. But obviously, we got to go through the process of, first and foremost, the budget needs to obviously be signed by the governor. I don't have any reason to believe by what's on the governor's desk right now is not going to be signed. But typically what takes place is both the House and the legislator agree on a budget and they submit it to the governor. There's 72 hours is what was called a cooling off period. And then from there, the governor has an opportunity to sign off on the budget. We get to work very, very, very quickly. I don't want to be pessimistic, but the way we came up with that $30 million number, I don't know how concrete it is. I don't know that we have an actual vendor to actually do the work. And I don't know that we have enough money, but we'll go through that process. Richard and I have had a few conversations about this. He's certainly eager to move forward with this. So we'll see, obviously, as first and foremost, the governor signs off on the budget. Second, the process on what takes place. It'll be several months before there's an opportunity to actually tap into the money that's awarded. So we're not anticipating to have resources till about July. Obviously, at that point in time, we'll work with the contractor. I've had a recent meeting with Noah Valenstein as recently as last week, and he was in my office. He has reassured me that Timbers Resort is very committed to this process and is, gave me his word, and so did Greg Spencer, that they're 100% committed to this process. And I've certainly worked with them in that regard. They're certainly feeling a lot of disconnect with FGUA. They're not very happy with them. And I think the overall feeling is that there's better providers out there. So this is an opportunity for us to walk away from FGUA. Timbers believes that's the best move as well. We're going to work through what that buyout looks like. I've been given two different numbers, one a very low number, one a high number, but obviously they're going to have to demonstrate what that is to us. We'll go through the process. The good news is the session obviously was big, and the session obviously gave a lot of money, but until we actually start putting invoices together, Jay, until we actually start matching up, is that $30 million adequate enough to fix the transmission lines? What's the next step? And obviously from there, we're going to submit, and in the capital improvement, I'll submit and work with Senator Albritton and obviously Senator Pasadoma on what's needed next. Obviously the piece for, Captiva, the piece for South Seas, we'll talk about what that dollars look like, what type of additional appropriations will need to take place.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So that's really where we're at. That's the best news. I mean, there's been a lot of awarding here. At the end of the day, I'll continue to make sure this panel understands, first and foremost, when the budget signed off, we'll do a summary. We'll talk about the next steps. We'll keep you informed with what the next steps look like as we go through this process. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed, obviously, because there's a lot of money that was awarded to Lee County. I just want to make sure that we count on every item that we have. And until he actually signs off on it, the big allocations, the bridges, this project, some of the other bigger allocations, have to go through his potential veto ability. I don't anticipate a veto, but you know what, until we actually have the budget signed off by the governor, I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch.
Right.
That's just a process. We've written a letter on behalf of Lee County as a chair of the Long-Term Recovery Task Force, obviously advocating for all the projects that's been in the budget and indicating that we've gone through just horrific, catastrophic damage. And we need every dime that's been allocated to us to come to this community. And I've certainly worked with his chief of staff to make sure he understands that verbally as well. Now we just sit and wait, Jay, and go through this process, but all good news. I don't want to necessarily say it's great news until the checks cleared the bank and that budget signed off by the governors. Once we're there, we can start to put together what the project looks like, what are the pieces that are necessary, and what funding is still missing to make sure we get to the next step on this.
Okay. Good. Kevin, I appreciate that update. Do people have questions for Kevin while we have him here?
I just want to clarify two things. So my understanding, based on what you said, Commissioner Wayne, is that the $30 million basically for Sanibel's transmission lines were unanticipated damage to their existing transmission lines that we didn't expect and were caused by the hurricane.
Correct.
Yes, and so once we can once those transmission lines are repaired, then as part of the CIP, the 5-year capital improvement plan, we can calculate how much it would cost to do the Captiva collection system to create a parallel system or whatever piping and lift stations are necessary for Sanibel to take the Captiva wastewater, whatever upgrades are necessary for South Seas to become part of the system. And then we'll fold that into a 5-year capital improvement plan based on our discussions with Sanibel. Is that basically what you're saying?
Correct. But also, David, what we'll do during that process is verify with the vendor that the $30 million is an adequate dollar amount to fix the transmission lines. Obviously, if current pricing has changed, we're going to need to obviously include that to finish the project. The good news is when the legislator commits to a project, if there's multiple phases to fund it, they'll generally fund it. The good news on this also is anytime there's a project that has multiple pieces, once you commit to a part, my experience has been with the legislator that they're committed to the entire project.
Okay. Okay, that'd be great. And
Good.
the other, just wanted to say in terms of the 1.1 billion for workforce housing, that's really vital for Sanibel and Captiva. And even though that workforce housing may not be built on Captiva because we don't have a place to build it, the fact that we're getting 1.1 that Commissioner Wayne has gotten the $1.1 billion will allow us to have workforce housing either in Sanibel or outside of Sanibel sufficient so that workers on Captiva and Sanibel will have a place to live. That's the hope. And I think that's important for Captiva residents to hear and understand that even though it may be not on Captiva, it's in Captiva's interest.
Absolutely, right.
And just for everyone's edification, we just completed a project in Cape Coral. And it was actually from the block grant from Irma. There was $10 million that was actually allocated. Between the various credits that you're able to, tax credits, things of that nature, the project ended up becoming $36 million, but there's opportunities to make 10 million grow obviously 3 times. The tax credits alone were over $12 million that the builder obviously realized. So that reduced the cost. We worked very closely, making sure there was no land cost. Both the county and Cape Coral allocated the land to it. We also then both contributed a few dollars a piece to it to make it work. So when I look at the $1.1 billion, there's many opportunities to have that expand and multiply. We'll work with the developers that are very common and familiar with it. Again, there's opportunities within Lee County. There's a SHIP grant. There's other grants that you could stack up with monies for the HUD dollars that have been allocated. And again, it's our intention to show the unmet need to be much more significant than 1.1 billion. I don't want to seem to be unappreciative, but obviously 1.1 billion isn't going to go very far within Lee County for any type of workforce housing whatsoever.
Kevin.
Yeah.
This is Linda from the CEPD as well as the panel. We've got a $13 million request through various channels for beach renourishment after the storm. Is that part of what you advocate? And I don't think it's going through you. I think it's going directly into the legislature. Whatever you could do to support that package, we would appreciate.
So there was over $50 million allocated to beach renourishment, as well as an additional $23 million and $5 million directly to Lee County before session started. So we're going to obviously put the 3 together and make sure it addresses what we believe is the amount of money. But I do believe based on what we received, the initial $5 million, the additional $23 million, and the additional $50 million that's been allocated in this budget, it should be able to address all the beach renourishment within Lee County.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions for Kevin?
Yeah, I got one, James Bruce
Yeah,
McDonald here. I know this really isn't in his Kevin, in your wheelhouse, but an issue that sort of seems to be getting a lot of traction here is around this legislation that we need passed. I guess this is in the Congress and Senate to classify the hurricane as a qualified federal
Disaster loss.
disasters, but yeah, I know, I guess I'm just sort of looking for some help on your end in terms of making our voices better heard here. I mean, I've written to my representative, and it's kind of wholly unsatisfactory issue that we're dealing with here, given this exemption's been granted to other disasters. But I guess I'd sort of be interested in if you're hearing what you're hearing on that, or your thoughts.
So correct. What Bruce is advocating or indicating about is a qualified disaster loss. The qualified disaster loss has been awarded to many communities after a disaster such as this. It took place in Michael, it took place in Sandy, it took place in Joplin, Missouri, after a tornado. What's important about this disaster loss, qualified disaster law, it allows you, the taxpayer, to deduct your complete loss dollar for dollar with no limitations and or dollar amounts that obviously would have to exceed. So what's normally done on this, it could fall between the casualty loss, and then if it goes in that regard, it's 10% of your adjusted gross income. The reason why we're advocating for it to be a qualified loss is it allows you dollar for dollar deduction. Just as session's over, we then pivot now and go to Washington. The local delegation's more than aware of it. We need to continue to obviously make a presence there in Washington, no different than we did in Tallahassee. I suspect it to be done in 23. It's obviously something that's always been awarded. This is the third most costly hurricane right now, projected to be at about $113 billion. I can't imagine, unfortunately, what takes place in Congress. It is part of a bill. It does obviously get lumped in with other items, and that's where the complexity comes in.
I see.
It just can't be one solo item separated from the world. The good news is this applies to all taxpayers, regardless of party affiliation. So this isn't a partisan issue, if you will. This is a community issue. We've certainly talked with both Senator Rubio and Senator Scott and talked to a lot of the delegation. They're aware of it. But to your point, Bruce, the only way that we're going to make this obviously be heard is, presence there, no different than what we did in Tallahassee. Our plan obviously is to meet with our lobbyists and start to go to DC. That's the next part of this phase, advocating for it. But I'm reasonably confident that'll be in 23. And we're just going to try to advocate that it's retroactive. So if you want an extension, you have the opportunity to go back and file for that. So it's a really big, significant item. We obviously look at it as one of the most influential items in economic recovery, because to be able to deduct such a loss on your tax return gives you dollar for dollar credit, and gives you instant dollars in your refund with a very short period of time where you'll receive it. So it's an area we started to talk about. It is covered by the branch in economic recovery. It is something we actually did inside the task force itself and addressed it almost at the beginning part of this. So everyone's aware of it. I do believe, like everything else, you're just going to need to put boots on the ground, and you're going to need to knock on doors, no different than we did in Tallahassee.
Okay, so
Right.
Kevin, you're not thinking that this is different than what other people have gone through and getting this 10% of AGI limitation waived?
So Jay, I actually think that it will be waived. Honestly,
Yeah.
right now, if it's a casualty loss, the limitation is 10%.
Of
You
AGI,
get to deduct that. What has always taken place in storms, and you can historically go back in the last 5 storms, it's always given the special qualified disaster loss where you deduct dollar for dollar from your income. So I don't believe this is going to be excluded. I think the bureaucracy just obviously hasn't moved at a pace that we're not comfortable with. It's 7 months into the storm. It hasn't been declared yet. Unfortunately, it's a bill that actually has to take place. It can't just be a piece of legislation everybody agrees upon and signs off on. So that
you're
is
saying it's part of other bills attached to it?
it'll have multiple items attached to it. Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Thanks for that clarification. Other
Yeah,
questions?
Thanks
Yes,
for keeping it on our radar screen, Kevin. I mean, it's a big item for people here in Lee County.
It's a huge item. I mean, certainly we have a family home in East Rocks that obviously is a scrape. We have gotten $0 from flood. So I certainly look at that as significant, certainly in anyone that has that type of devastation. This was a flood event. So in many cases, and most people are limited to $350,000. So I recognize what your potential property may be worth. And you have the opportunity to get outside appraiser. You can then get to deduct whatever you receive from insurance. That net number, you get to deduct dollar for dollar. So I understand just how significant it is, and personally can tell you, I have a home that's subject to it, and certainly looking for it to go through because I could certainly use the tax deduction.
right.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Other questions for Kevin? Well, Kevin, thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule. Has become your practice for the past several months. We appreciate it very much, and just really appreciate the level of attention that you give to the community panel and understanding what our needs are. Thank you so much, and we'll let you go on with your busy day.
Not a problem, Jay. If anything comes up, feel free to contact my office and reach out to Pamela, and we'll certainly jump on it. Thank you.
Okay.
You all have a great day.
Thank you,
You
Kevin.
too.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, next up, update from the sheriff's office. Mike Sawicki, are you around?
I sure am.
Okay,
Okay, I just have a couple of items to go over real quick. One, I was out the other night with Lee County Code Enforcement on their sea turtle lighting survey, the first one of the year. So just a reminder, it is sea turtle season. All we with the sheriff's office do is drive the buggy. But I can tell you that they had about 75 locations that were in violation. So I did tell the code enforcement people that I'd mention it in the panel meeting. It's just a reminder to check your turtle lighting, make sure you're in compliance. A lot of times the best thing you can do is just take a nice, pleasant nighttime walk out there on the beach. I think what you might be surprised of is that now there's a lot of places that are in violation that because of the foliage loss were probably not a violation last
oh,
year
good point.
before the
Yeah,
hurricane.
yeah,
And so the other issue we had is we had a lot of houses that were nice and dark when you look straight at them, as a homeowner might do if they walked straight out and looked. But then when you walk around the sides, there's, lights on the side of the house or the front of the house that are visible from the beach. The other thing that the code enforcement people did is they sent me 2 attachments, which I've sent to Ken. One covers, they have a couple of window clings about, turtles dig the dark, and a little overview of sea turtle lighting. That could be useful once rental properties are back up and running. The other thing is that there's a brochure she sent over from the Sea Turtle Conservancy regarding lighting retrofit grant programs, where STC will send out a crew. They'll help assess the lighting, work up a plan. This is on qualifying homes, which I would imagine a lot of our houses out here along the beaches would qualify. And once they work up the plan, they establish a little grant, and most of the cost is covered by the grant. So anyway, I sent that brochure to Ken if anybody's interested in it. Otherwise, they can reach out to me and I can forward it to you individually if you'd like.
well, I think you're making a good point here that because of the loss of vegetation, we probably have a lot more violations, or will have, than what we have historically, because we had vegetation to block light that we don't have now. I
Yeah,
think-
it was a long night. The other thing is, I'm sure has not been lost on any of you guys. We are back on the doorstep of hurricane season. So, just a quick reminder to look into your readiness plans. As always, if you guys have any questions or need any help with readiness plans, me and my staff are available. There's also great resources through the county and some of the federal resources as well. And my last thing I wanted to bring up is I know a lot of us have had or continue to have workers and contractors and things in and out of our properties. Please consider changing your security codes. Or if you've been using like a hidden key location for them to get in, or, even if you need to rekey locks, if the key control has kind of gotten away from it. The problem is, you might tell one contractor a key code to get into like a garage. Next thing you know, he's telling a couple subs and, they have a worker going in there on a Sunday, and then the worker has some scuzzy cousin that he
Right.
gives it to. And so, just as a matter of, security for your residences and your businesses, just kind of keep that somewhere in the back of your mind that, as we get beyond some of the home repairs, consider making those changes just for your home security. Also just, check the functions of your security systems. And if you have cameras, I know I always bang on about the cameras, but they really are very useful for us in detecting, solving, and prosecuting crimes. So, if you just remember to check the function of those as well.
Okay. Any questions for Mike?
Hey, I have one. Mike, what time of night did the survey take place?
So we usually start right after dark, but the ordinance is 9 p.m. So we have to wait until after 9 to do that. And generally, I mean, I guess I wouldn't make this a rule out of it, but we kind of started up at the South Seas end and worked our way down. So I think we were done 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh, okay,
So
it was a long night.
yeah, it sure was. And another thing is that, a lot of these lights are just on all night anyway. I don't know. I know my dad would probably chase me around the yard with a stick if I left my lights on like that all the time when I was a kid. So I don't know how many of them we need on at 3 o'clock in the morning. So maybe some timers and things along with the compliant lighting might help save people some energy costs and also make sure we're in compliance.
Mhm.
Hey, Mike, it's Tony. You said about this grant that they basically come out and do the survey and then they pay for the lighting. Is that right?
Yeah, it's from reading the brochure, and I can't claim to be an expert on it. I've only just
Okay.
read the brochure. But yeah, they do a grant, and it says in the brochure, I think the language is that it covers, I think it said most of the cost. So there might be some out-of-pocket cost, but it looks like the bulk of it comes in under the grant.
Wonder if it's good for commercial properties as well as residential. So
That
we'll
is
look
a
into it.
good question.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
All right,
Mike?
you're welcome.
Mike, I have a quick question. If someone's in violation, does a code enforcement officer notify that particular property, or what happens if they see a violation?
Yeah, they use they have a variety of filters and photo spectrometers and things to look at these lights when they are visible from the beach. Then they GPS tag the location and send a letter, like a notice, to the property owner.
Okay,
So that way we don't have to go banging on people's doors at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning to scold them about lights.
I was just curious what the process was. Thanks.
Right. And the
Yeah.
uphill challenge is always the the rental properties. You have people visiting from out of the area and just aren't aware of the necessity to turn it off. And I feel like that's where the success of some of these window clings and stuff are, where people are walking in and out of that slider 10 times a day instead of, reading the big thick binder of rental information with the
Mhm.
house.
Mhm.
Okay, next up, Chief Powell. Jeff, are you present?
I am. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Jeff.
Sorry, I'm in my vehicle headed in town to the food pantry. So, since Mike already addressed the hurricane issue, I guess I don't have to bring that up, and he can be the bearer of bad news. Just two quick things to cover. Jay, you and I talked about it last week, but I just want to quell any rumors that are out there. Some misconception that somebody started that I'm leaving the island and the fire department. That is 100% not true. So if you heard it, it's not true. I'm not leaving. I'm very happy where I'm at. So You can, if anybody brings it up again, I'm assuming it was confused with either the Upper Captiva chief leaving or Fort Myers Beach chief leaving. I don't know, but I'm not. So it's definitely not true. I'm very happy where I'm at. Second, and
Thank you for
much
clarifying that, Jeff.
second, much more important, I just want to announce, if you guys have not seen it as of yet, we do have a Lee County ambulance that is stationed full-time at the fire district now. So if you haven't seen it in the bay there, it is now. And I want to thank obviously my commissioners and the Lee County commissioners who got this done, but panel, you guys as well played an integral role in supporting and helping us move this along. So just want to thank you guys for your assistance on that as well. So it's going to be a great addition, increased services to the island for all of you guys and our visitors.
Yep, that's great.
And Jeff, are they being housed out of your area?
They are. Yep. Yes, sir.
Back to full circle. Okay.
Yep, full circle. They're in our apparatus bay. They've got 2 rooms. They're there 24/7.
So now we now get you a helicopter. That's the next thing we get for you.
There you go.
Working on it.
So, anybody have any other questions for me?
Jeff, thank you for the update. It's great
Absolutely.
news that you're not going anywhere, and it's also great news that we finally have our ambulance.
Yes,
Oh.
absolutely.
Good
All right.
report.
Thank you,
Okay.
guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, next up, CEPD update from Daniel Munt. Daniel.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Yesterday, the board approved the proposal for Aptum to conduct the year 1 post-construction physical monitoring for the renourishment project. It's a permit requirement to do so. So this is expected to occur in June or July. The really nice part about that is, in addition to fulfilling the required component to our permit, we expect to gain additional insight into the recovery of our beach by comparing it to the post-storm survey that was conducted in October. So it'd be interesting to see how the beach is returning to form. This survey will also provide a baseline for the conditions of the beach prior to the latter part of hurricane season. God forbid another storm should hit us, we'll be prepared to respond to it afterward. The other part of, we received some good news yesterday. So Nick Matthews from Becker, which is our lobbying firm, provided us with an update on our legislative appropriations request. And our request for $400,000 for the phase 2 of our planning and design for coastal resilience has been approved. The approval is still subject to veto. At this time, we don't have any indication that that's forthcoming. And CEPD, we've had great support from the panel and other agencies in refining the vulnerability analysis. So we look forward to the next phase of this process. And for continued support and to help reinforce the importance of coastal resiliency to Captiva, I'd like to ask if the panel would be willing to prepare a letter of support for us to accompany our request at the governor's desk. And if so, I can coordinate offline to assist in shaping the type of letter that we're looking for.
Yeah, just work with Kevin, work with Ken Gurdaham on that, and we'll get a letter in support of the $400,000.
Perfect, thank you. And then another quick administrative note is the next CEPD meeting will be in person. It'll be on June 12th. If anybody's willing to or would like to attend that, it's open to the public at the Civic Association.
That's June 12th. That's the next CEPD.
Yes,
What time do you hold that, Dan?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. Okay.
Daniel, are you confident that we're going to get the money we need to restore the beach to its pre-Ian condition?
So there are requests in addition to our the FDEPs provided. I have that number. Roughly $13 million in total in grant funding. We had already received notice that we'll be receiving 48% of the request, which is a little over 6.3 million. So through our legislative appropriations request, we requested the additional 52% of that estimated $13 million. At this time, it's appearing so. We also have our request is still under review with the Army Corps of Engineers. There's been little progress on that over the past month or so. I'm hoping for an update soon. It's been in legal review to see if they want to work with us. If they do pick up our project, they'll construct the project under their costs.
Daniel, you're gonna have to explain that again because I didn't understand it. Initially, I thought it would cost about 13 to 16 million to renourish our beach post Hurricane Ian, correct?
Okay. Yes, 13 million
13
change was
Okay.
the estimate.
Was the amount Aptum came out with 13 million?
I don't believe it was Aptum, it was a statewide.
Well,
Right, they estimated.
somebody must have estimated what it cost to upgrade to renourish our beach.
Yes, it was just over $13 million.
Okay. And so it's unclear, based on Commissioner Ruane's report, it sounds like there was funds appropriated from the state legislature to the county for beach renourishment. But it was unclear to me that any of that money is earmarked for Captiva or for CPD.
It's been indicated to me that the request for the initial wave, I believe is the same wave of funding that you're referring to, which would be 48% of our cost, will be earmarked and go directly to our agency. I've talked with Steve Patel at the county, and he said it's going to come directly to us. It won't be filtered through the county.
Well, is that the same money that Commissioner Ruane was talking about?
I was not present for part of his report, so I'm not sure. I didn't hear that part.
So you're saying half of the 13 million, about 48%, is coming from the money that the state legislature appropriated already?
Yes,
Okay, and then the other 6.5 million is coming from where?
that is from our legislative appropriations request.
That's CEPD's request.
Yes.
Okay, and has that been approved by the legislation just as waiting the governor's sign off on, or is that something different?
I've not heard indication of final approval yet. It's still in the process from that. Nick Matthews indicated everything is on track at this point. It's still not finally approved at this point that I'm aware of.
Okay, and then you're saying, in addition, notwithstanding what may have been given to the county that we're going to get 48% of, and notwithstanding this possible legislative approval, the Army Corps of Engineers may decide to take up this project and fund it separately through federal funds, and therefore we wouldn't need the 16 million?
Correct. If they do pick up the project, it'll be funded through them, constructed by them, and constructed, planned, everything done through the Army Corps. I'm not sure if they will or not, because again, Captiva doesn't have the parking or the easements required by them. But we've got to go through their process to see if they will prior to turning back to other funding sources.
Okay, so we really then, assuming Army Corps is not going to do it, we really do need to nail down from whether we're getting half of it from the allocation that's going to the county and the other half through the legislative request that CEPD made directly to the legislature, correct?
I'm not understanding your question. We will receive the 48%. I've not received any indication that that's changed.
Okay.
And then the legislative appropriations, if it goes through, will be a separate funding mechanism that we'll receive.
Okay, and what happens if that legislative request doesn't go through for that extra 6.5 million?
We'd have to pursue other funding avenues.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I understood it because, okay, all right.
The Army Corps is we're not hanging our hat on that, because we have easement issues up and down the beaches that the Army Corps demands and wants, and then owners aren't interested.
Okay, the reason I'm asking this, Bob, is I see the legislative requests that have come through. So for example, Jay mentioned that Sanibel got $32 million for upgrading their sewer system that was damaged during the hurricane. And I'm assuming there's a legislative request reported out already where the $6.5 million, which is in response to your request directly to the legislature, that's got to be somewhere memorialized, right? That's got to be a document where the legislature has approved that $6.5 million. Have we seen that?
I have not seen that.
Okay. All right. That's the question I'm asking. Because if we don't get that $6.5 million, then it's going to have to be taxed, or people have to be taxed pretty much, right? That's where we're going to be if we don't get that.
My understanding is there's another 350 million being allocated. That's what I heard yesterday after this round. After this round, there's another 350 million coming. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many buckets out there, Daniel. If you could put together a one-page doc that basically says, here are the options, here's what we've done, here's the status, sort of a, one sheet fact finding, I can tell what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think that'd be helpful for everybody. Get with Nick from Becker, because we've got irons out in every fire right now for funding. And there's a possibility, quite frankly, after this next survey, that we may not need to do a complete nourishment again. I mean, we have sections of beach that are coming back.
Okay.
I'll do that, Bob.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, anything further on CEPD? Okay,
I'm sorry. I say we've already touched on the sea turtle nesting season, so I just want to remind everybody to remove their items off the beach when they're done. So it's not interfere. We do have 8 nests on Captiva at my last notification, and we did also have our first nesting shorebird colony in 10 years up in the South Sea Florida. So
Wow.
The turns have returned.
okay. Next up is SCCF update. Is Matt or Carrie here?
It's going to be Carrie today.
Okay.
So hello, everybody. So first of all, I wanted to thank folks who have already mentioned the sea turtle nesting aspect with what's happening on the beaches right now. And as Daniel just pointed out, you guys have your first least turns nest in 10 years, which is very exciting. So I think mostly I'm going to talk about some legislative updates that Matt and I discussed yesterday to pass along. But the one thing I will mention briefly on the resilience side, so there's other resilience pieces that some of that news is already coming out in other agenda items, but I will mention that the SANCAP Citizens for a Resilient Future, we've been doing these community events. And we've already had 2, but we have an upcoming event May 22nd at Big Arts from 6 to 8 p.m. that will be focused specifically on emergency response. I know that we'll just actually have a chance to discuss it within this meeting, that the community panel and CEPD did put on a hurricane in debriefing and got to already discuss emergency response, but this should be something that can supplement some of that. And we're going to have Lieutenant Mike Sawicki is going to join us just to make sure we get some Captiva representation for the ideas that come out of that. And there's also going to be some county level perspective, et cetera. So we can pass along that announcement to Ken. So on the legislative side, so first of all, I think Kevin already alluded to this, but the legislative session has ended. So anything that SCCF advocates for is really going to be action around for, because the bills have already passed through the legislature in terms of the Senate or the House, we will focus on that step for when the bills go to the governor's desk to be signed or vetoed. There's 2 bills in one line item in the budget that we are focused on right now. So the first bill is SB 540. Essentially what that does is it says if a citizen brings a comprehensive land use legal challenge against a city or a county and they lose that challenge, essentially what this bill provides for is that a citizen would be on the hook for the prevailing party's legal fees, which could be, significant. Our concern about this is that we view this as, effectively ending Florida's citizens' ability to participate in local land use decisions, because most people will not necessarily be able to take on the risk of being on the hook for those prevailing legal fees. There is also current legislation that does already cover instances of frivolous lawsuits. So there are protections already in place for governments from illegitimate claims. So again, we feel, we have concern around citizens' ability to challenge what they feel is inappropriate land use decisions. So we have an active veto campaign to request a veto from the governor around this bill. The next bill is SB 170. And what that bill does is it allows local governments, it provides for local governments to be sued by local businesses that may feel they're being impacted by enacted ordinances. It's essentially triggered if a business suggests they have experienced impacts over, I think at or over $50,000 of their business. Essentially, whatever act or ordinance they're challenging can't move forward until the lawsuit is resolved. Our concern is that this could have outsized impacts on ordinances, especially from our perspective on environmental issues like, for example, the sea turtle lighting, potentially single-use plastic policies. There's lots of examples of what that could look like. There have been previous similar legislation that's been proposed in other sessions that the governor has vetoed before, and we hope he does so again. But we do have a veto campaign around this bill. And lastly, there is a line item in the budget bill. So that big legislative budget bill that gets passed, and Kevin again referenced that bill, but it's got a lot of content in there. And there is a specific line item that funds a UF IFAS study that's focused on the effectiveness of seasonal fertilizer application. We don't have any issue with, with appropriate study around that kind of topic, but our concern is that there's actually phrasing attached to this that will ban new or amended ordinances limiting the use of fertilizer for a year. And our concern specifically is the fact that this is in the budget bill. And we feel that this is a really inappropriate way to pass legislation by trying to bypass the proper channels. So normally you'd have this as part of a dedicated bill that would be brought in through committee review. So in the Senate or the House, there's 3 committees that bills will go through traditionally. That line item, it was not brought up for debate. It was really brought in and sort of instilled into this in the 11th hour. So, we certainly have some concerns about that setting precedent of setting legislation in this way. It's not really the appropriate way to be setting legislation. And, of course, we have concerns about what that means for water quality, especially considering our connectivity to the larger Caloosahatchee watershed. So those are our updates on the legislative side, and I just want to see if there's any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, and feel free if you want to pose a question that perhaps Matt will know more about. You can always email me. So I'm cschuman@sccf.org. Schuman is SCHUMAN, and I can certainly pass it along to Matt for further, answers around this.
Okay. Is that the report?
Yeah, that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Anything else for Carrie before we move on?
Well,
Okay, Bob Walter, what's going on at South Seas?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Ken, can I share my screen?
Ken?
I'm setting that up now.
Okay.
You should be all set, Bob. Go ahead.
Got it, thanks. Y'all see my screen now?
Yep, I got it.
Some of this you've already seen, but just as a reminder, Starbucks opened late February this year. Kind of steady business right now. Not a lot of people in the island, but we're happy to have that open and some sense of normalcy back. Absolutely. Late April, this is a little post-dated, but Yacht Harbor Main Marina is open. We have some transient traffic coming in and out, selling gas and that sort of thing. So again, some normalcy coming back. Mid to late July.
Excuse me, Bob, you are selling gas at the marina now to anybody that comes in, or?
Yes.
Okay,
If that's an inaccurate statement, I'll let you know. But yeah, I've not heard differently.
okay, thank you.
Mid to late July, I think I mentioned this already. We're looking to already purchased, but we're having built and retrofitted food trucks to service the main beach area, since we don't have anything out there to cook and serve from. Early summer 2023, that's probably more of a July, mid-July number, but CPC, we're looking to get back open. Bayview Fishing Pier, formerly the T-Dock, construction started in March and going very well. Our third-party vacation rentals, we're still hearing from most of our HOAs that target date for September to get majority of those units back in order. North Pool, including slide pool, late summer 2023 as well, and Tarpon Bar, which is the Tiki Bar, and Club Captiva Beach, Sunset Beach operations late summer as well, chair service, towel service, that sort of thing. November, we're looking to have the golf course completed on or about Thanksgiving week. That's our target, and open for business. Late 2023, Harborside Bar and Grill. Late 2023, Redfish Grill, which is formerly the Point Pool Restaurant. Early 2024, our Bayview Pavilion event lawn on or around the T-Dock area. We're looking at putting a tent back up there. Still in discussions for that. But here's the one that we still don't have an answer on. We're expecting it any day now, that our Harborside Hotel. The conversations are still going on regarding the 50% rule. And right now, we were leaning, I would tell you we're probably gonna have to bring down those buildings. So more to come on that. We're not really excited about that, but it looks like that's something that's just gonna have to happen. Revetment work along Redfish Pass. Just to give you an idea, these pictures are probably from about 2 weeks ago. The one on your left is looking about halfway through Redfish Pass, looking back west. And then the one on the right is same spot looking east toward Land's End. And this is really important. I wanted to point this out. I may have said it on a previous call, but on or about where you see the equipment, heavy equipment on the right screen, we back in 2015 had a washout there after a storm, and we did about 75 feet of these vinyl retaining wall piles. And literally that's about the 75-foot section that did well during the storm. And I've been here for, it was 10 years in January, and we've had at least 2-3 washouts along here. So when we put this back together, we're funding almost 1,800 linear feet of these panels, which will go from the entrance to Blind Pass where the jetty is, all the way around the turn to about 100 yards from where everyone fishes in front of Land's End there. So this is a permanent fix. These panels are in, and then riprap will be backed up against that. There won't be a seawall or anything like that. That'll be, once they're done, they'll be backfilled and covered up with landscaping and riprap on the seaward side. So it'll look all natural. I don't know if I've had this in the panel, but this rendering of the water feature in the south end, we had a couple panel calls ago where people were interested in where it was laying out. This has been distributed weeks ago to the HOAs and the presidents within South Seas. But this, I didn't know if we shared it with this group, but this is the same rendering I think we showed, but it kind of is an overlay of where the entrance to Bayside Villas is here, and you can see the first tennis villa building here. So you can see where the quiet areas are along the tennis villa side and that sort of thing, which we talked about on our call. The golf course, as I mentioned, is fully underway. Our goal from a resiliency perspective, our lakes were, for lack of a better term, designed previously as useless. This actually is the lake area that was closest to Land's End, which would be on your left, and your back is at the Gulf of Mexico, and you're looking through to Pine Island Sound. This large lake is going to be about 30% bigger than the previous lake out there, if not 40%, and probably about 18 feet deep, not 18 inches deep at its deepest spot. So that'll handle a lot more runoff from the course instead of going into and out of the course and into Pine Island Sound. So we're absolutely doing this right. And that's the last shot I had.
Bob, when will, I'm not exactly sure how to ask this question. When do you project that South Seas will have a normal amount of rental activity going, vacation rental activity? How far away are you from that?
I would say, first of all, if our hotel comes out, it's all going to be through our third parties, right? So they're saying they can get most of these back in September. We have approximately 95 homeowners that we're looking at doing a complete renovation in their units that come forward and say what we have an interest. And right now we're in the pricing stages of that and getting those owners back a firm number for them to make decisions on. And our goal is to have all that done by middle to late October at the latest. So to answer your question, Jay, I would say normalcy as it relates to you could go sit on the beach, you can get a towel, you can have a chase, and you can go up to get a burger and a beer, that type of thing. But out of a food truck, I would say Q1 2024. Listen, we have an ownership group just like our third parties that want to get their units back and rented and get tourists back in town. We have lenders and we have owners that want to produce revenue as well. So trust me, it is a top conversation in our meetings to get it up and running.
Well, when do you think maybe put it this way, when do you think you might have 50% of all rental units being rented?
I would say easily by mid Q1 of 2024. There's no reason we shouldn't have half of our rental units rented, open for renting.
Okay, so first half of next calendar year.
Yeah, we don't. Ideally, we don't want to miss a season, and that's what we're pushing for everybody.
Bob, can I just clarify what you said, because it was a shocker? I don't know if everybody caught it, but are you suggesting that the county may require, or FEMA may require, county and FEMA together may require the demolition of the 109 hotel units that South Seas currently owns and rents?
Yes.
That would leave South Seas with owning 0 units, basically.
To the rebuild, correct.
Wow. That is a big deal. Is that, you think that's going to be a done deal, that you're going to be?
We've been going back and forth for about 6 weeks now, and it's kind of leaning that way.
My God. Wow. Okay. All right. I thought that's what you said. I just wanted to understand it.
Oh, no, that's the way I understood it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So then you're going to basically have 140 units and 109 units, 259 units, basically, which you're going to have to redevelop, so to speak.
Correct, for all intents and purposes, right?
Yeah. Wow. Boy, it's costing more than I think people anticipated.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Bob, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
We know what you're going through.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, anybody have anything for Bob? Okay, I've got an item here called additional updates for David Mintz. I'm not sure what that means, David. Is that a cat?
I just want to take 5 minutes with people just to remember Kevin talked about the CIP, the capital improvement plan, and is a 5-year plan that the county put together. I'm on the as well as Sandy, the planning and capacity branch of the resiliency. And we keep hearing from our people to think big.
Whereas don't think small, but think big, because they're calling this a once in a generational funding opportunity that's coming from the state and the federal government in response to the hurricane. So what I'm going to begin to put together with people's permission is basically a capital improvement plan overview for Captiva, which incorporates everything that we've been talking about for the last number of years. And that's going to include, it's going to come to over $100 million in requests that I think we should be part of the capital improvement plan for Captiva, which would include.
Well, I admire your aggressiveness. I'm having trouble understanding how you're going to get to 100 million.
Okay, I was just going to go through it quickly.
Okay.
Okay, the central sewer, we know it's about $20 million for the Captiva collection system. We know it's about $19 million to upgrade the Sanibel system for our wastewater, including South Seas. So
Right.
that's 40 million right there. We don't have a number yet for the what upgrades would have to be actually made at South Seas if they want to be part of this system. In other words, their own collection system that now goes to FGUA. And there's the effluent disposal upgrades that'll be necessary as we get the report done from Tetra Tech. So
Right.
we're talking at least probably $50 million just for the sewer piece of it, including South Seas and for us. Then we have $200,000 for our stormwater management planning and design study, which is already a proposal is in, and we've already been told we'll get the funding for that. But then there's actual, and I'm going to try to get a number from Kimberly Horn, what it would actually cost, round figures, to implement a stormwater project in the village, right, Jay? So
Yeah,
that-
you would just assume that each street in the city is going to have a
right. Your system.
yeah, a drain line.
Right. So then we also have, and I'm going to take away the $13 million from the beach renourishment because that's already going to be funded, according to Daniel, hopefully. And we also already have, we have $400,000 that we need for the sidewalk construction,
Right.
which should be part of this project. And
Hey,
then,
David, I wouldn't take away 13 yet. I mean, I'd have
Okay,
a placeholder
leave
in
it
a
in
couple
there.
spots.
okay, I'll leave it in there. Then we have the resiliency planning, which we supposedly have tentative approval for the $400,000 for the phase 2 resiliency planning for CPD, but that was in there. But we don't know what the cost would be for the actual implementation and construction of the resiliency plan, but it's going to cost, at least $10 million. We know that.
I would guess.
Yeah, if you're going to try to guesstimate that, I mean,
Yeah,
that's $1
yeah,
billion.
right. I don't know.
Yes,
I don't know.
20.
And then I spoke to Bruce McDonald yesterday to just get a sense of what it costs to bury the power lines, which seems to be a priority in Lee County. They're talking about it everywhere. And that's about 14.5 million just for the power lines and probably the price. So you're talking about 15, 16 or $17 million for the power lines. So if you put that in there, we're really talking close to $100 million, Jay. That's where it's coming from because
I
you got
think you should put in
That's
something.
woefully inadequate, Dave.
woefully inadequate. You just told me you didn't know how I could get to it.
David, I think you should put some telecom stuff in.
Okay, so anyway, I'm going to prepare it and I'll get it back to the panel when I do. But I think we need to be part of this, and Sandy's shaking her head, I think we need to be part of this whole program and get our needs in there because we have them and everybody else is doing it. I mean, just like we heard Sanibel just got $32 million for their sewer project. And Kevin basically said that we have to figure out what we need that'll tack on to that. So anyway, I just want to let everybody know I'm putting this together and then
Okay.
get out to everybody.
So Dave, if we get the money for like the sewer system, that means the tax assessments for Captiva homeowners will be off the hook for that.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
Some of the benefits of a good hurricane.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. As somebody once said, you never want to let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
And so this is basically, we need to do this. Now, septic to sewer conversion is a big deal
Right.
for resiliency, and we have to be part of that. the resilience plan for the Bayside is a big part of it, and power lines is turning out to be a big part of it. And we've been trying to bury power lines for 2 decades, and this may be our opportunity to do it. And so the money is there. It seems like it's there. So I just want to make sure that our proposals are submitted as part of the Captiva needs.
David, probably the homeowner will still be liable for the hookup from the house to the park, correct?
Well, it depends. I mean, when Kimley Horn did the initial study, that was included. That was actually included in
That
there.
is part of the 20 million.
Part of the 20 million. So we have to see how that plays out, right?
And then if they do the power lines, they're gonna give me a check back for what I put under?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just want to make sure that we're part of this process. That's it.
Right.
No.
David, I have a question for you. Are you going to be adding in like more of the stormwater? Because I would love to see the water on the streets effectively be able to be taken out. And maybe with, so we could talk, and I know that you've been working on that, but that's a big thing to me. Because even when it's just a rainy day, it floods,
Yeah, we have a design proposal by Kimley Horn that is complete. And Commissioner Ruane committed that he has the funds to pay for that study.
It's 200,000, Sandy, roughly.
That's 200,000. And that will deal with the flooding in front of the green flash, in front of your house, in front of all of the village and all the streets. And then when I'm speaking to Molly this afternoon, I want to get a ballpark figure of what an average construction cost would be that Jay was talking about a minute ago, for leaving aside what the design ends up being. What is, no matter what it is, what's the average cost to construct this stormwater system? And then we'll add that to this project. And so we won't have the exact numbers, but we'll have a ballpark number, because we want to be part of it won't be this year, but if there's a 5-year capital improvement plan, we want to be somewhere in that 5 years. Is that okay? Yeah.
A good project, David.
Yeah. Yeah. Jay, the other thing, I mean, I got this frog in my throat and I apologize. What Commissioner Ruane said is that he wants to go through this $32 million like Sanibel had and see if it's a real number. And I think we need to be part of that discussion so that we can begin to parse out exactly what the costs are going to be for Captiva and what the timetable is for us to do an MSTBU if we need to do an MSTBU. Because if in fact this is funded through state and federal funding, I don't even know whether an MSTBU is necessary at that point. So we need to work out these details.
That's a good point, David. I mean, is there, if a sewer system was free to Captiva residents, would there be any basis for any of them objecting to this?
Right. Now, this could just be a county, a county project that would be funded through state and federal funds. So I'm not sure that's true. I just want to understand this better. The other thing that Commissioner Ruane said, and I'm sure Bob Walter, if he's around, heard it, is that he believes he has a commitment from South Seas to be part of the sewer project.
Yes, I heard that.
And that would mean, basically, he said it, closing down the FGUA plant and buying out the FGUA plant. And he said he got 2 numbers, a high number and a low number on the FGUA, buying out the assets of the FGUA plant or the debt of the FGUA plant. I know one number we had early was like $3 million.
3 million was the number we always had.
Right. So what Commissioner Ruane is talking about is buying out the debt of the FGUA plant and having all of Captiva including the smaller package plants at Twin Waters and Sunset Captiva and all of South Seas and all of our septics tied into the Donex, to the transmission system, the Donex plant, which is a big deal. It's a big deal. And, you know, what I just want to say that after the big rain we had after the hurricane we had a couple of weeks ago, there was septic smell on a number of streets on Captiva, which means that the heavy rains caused the flooding of either the tanks or the drain field sufficient that there was that wastewater was in the streets.
Right.
And I mean, as much as people would rather have septics than sewers for lots of reasons, I think it just became evident that this is something that has to be dealt with regardless, because we just can't have wastewater flowing down the streets of Captiva.
Right.
So we
Okay.
wouldn't, Dave, we wouldn't need a 51% approval from homeowners or land to pass. It may be, you're saying it may be a county thing that we wouldn't need to vote on it.
I don't know. See, that's what I don't know. That's what I want to work out, because even if it doesn't cost anything, I don't know if you need a vote for people to agree to a sewer system, even if it's funded primarily through state and federal funds on sewer to septic to sewer conversion. I just don't know. And and if South Seas is part of it, we don't know whether there's 600 or 900 or 800 votes from South Seas, or whether there's just one vote at South Seas, because you're basically just moving from an FGA plant to a Sanibel plant. Details that we need to better understand as we move this process along. And I think that it behooves us all to just understand it as we go, so that our community, we're fully transparent and our community knows exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Okay.
I have a question here, though. This was news to me about the rainfalls causing septic system failures. And by the time we get a septic hookup going, I imagine it's at least 5 years, knowing who knows? It's a guess, right?
Right.
We need to be taking some action to protect the citizens and the water at this point.
I don't know what that would be, Linda.
Well, people could, you could have inspections of septic systems.
Well, but the reason that would be happening is the ground is completely saturated. And so it can't absorb the effluent coming out of the drain field.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't have anything to do with improper operation of a septic system. It's just, the drain field is only a few inches below grade. And if your ground's totally saturated, the effluent's just gonna, be washed around by, the water moving around the island.
I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but we're about 7 inches or 10 inches, whatever the number is, below normal rainfall in the area year to date. And so, I mean, I can't imagine how 1 or 2 storms in the last few weeks had the ground that saturated that the smell of septic coming up, which concerns me that were they underwater and damaged to an extent that we really don't know about at this point in time from the storm.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hurricane could have done to the septic fields or the septic tanks. I assume there are septic tanks. There could be septic tanks that are leaking that need to be replaced for this 5-year period. I don't know, but it seems like, assuming it's just the groundwater is, I think we need to know more and get somebody out to look at all of this, and individuals. I don't know what we need to do, but I don't think this is acceptable to just say, oh, it's the septic, it's sea level rise and the water level's too high.
I think Bob Walter made a good point. I mean, I did assume that it was the rain that did it, but it may be just the legacy of the hurricane that caused, malfunctioning septics. But what I do know is that a number of properties, or at least one property, conventional septic fields and are often right at the ground level. They're not raised, they're not on a mound. And some of the newest septic's been placed on a mound, if you notice in some of the areas in the village.
Right.
For those that are not, those on a mound is because they create artificially a bigger division between the groundwater and the disposal field. The ones on the ground have a shrinking vertical separation between the drain field and the groundwater. That's one, and what they're being told, some of the property owners are being told is that they have to replace their drain fields with mounded drain fields at this point, which is unfortunate because they're going to spend $30,000 when we may have a sewer system 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. But that's what individual property owners are being told, that having their drain fields at ground level when you have these heavy water events is causing the inability of the drain fields to accept the wastewater. So that's one of the things that we're hearing, Bob. And I don't
Where
know.
are you hearing that? Where are you hearing that from, David?
From homeowners that have called me that have been told that have had some of that septic smell in their front yards. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to attack this problem right off. I'll give it some thought. Maybe we just call Cruz and just ask him what he thinks about it.
Who's Cruz?
He is the contractor that handles more septic systems on Captiva than any other.
Cruise Environmental.
Cruz Environmental, yeah.
I mean, technically, if you pump your septics on a regular basis, your septic tanks on a regular basis, you won't have effluent going into the drain field because it'll fill up the tank.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
technically.
you
So-
have, okay, if you're tied, this is John, help me here. But if you're tied, whatever pipes you have going into the septic tank and then into the septic field are broken, which I actually had up here in Pennsylvania. If they're broken, everything falls apart. It's not even the septic field's fault. It's you've got broken piping.
Could be.
Yeah, if it's broken piping, that's a whole different thing. You know,
Right.
that's,
And we don't know.
yeah.
We don't know. And should we be able to get the county inspectors in, or do we have to have the wastewater? I mean, the people who pump out septic fit systems look at it.
That's Cruise.
That's
Yeah.
Cruz. Have
Well,
Cruz.
Cruz would just be some proportion of all the septic systems. I don't know how you would get a one-time complete inspection of all the septic systems on Captiva. I don't know how something like that would happen.
The other thing that is available that I know about, that used to be available, is people can flush stuff down their toilet and see where the dye comes out.
That's if you have a lake, right?
That's if you have a lake. Okay, well, that's what I know about that.
Well, I think if an individual homeowner, their management company notices, a smell or, something that's not ordinary, they could call Cruz. I would think they would want to get it taken care of. They could call Cruz and have their tank, make sure their tank's pumped out and,
I mean, John, there's things that can be done on an individual homeowner basis. Yeah, I mean, everybody could, call their contractor and say, please inspect my system. I think what Linda's wondering is there some way you can get an inspection, of all Captiva septic systems to see if we have some kind of a gigantic, Captiva-wide problem.
and then who pays for that?
Or
Yeah.
you go tell
Yeah.
individuals that they have a problem. And I mean, this is hurting our water, obviously.
I mean, for $100,000, we probably can get a Cruise Environmental or somebody like that to inspect all the septics on the island. Because usually it's about what, $300,000 $300 for a septic inspection. You multiply that by 350, it's about $100,000. So if you want, I don't know, we can do this or whether we should do this, but I'm just saying, if the county said, yeah, you know, or we said, we'd like to have just a quick septic inspection so everybody knows that the hurricane didn't harm their septic systems and they're functioning properly, it'll cost you about $100,000 to do that for the island. If you wanted to do that, if it made sense as a policy now.
Yeah, but then you're gonna have problems with, if you're gonna have one guy do it, then you've got to coordinate with, individual homeowners. Do they want this guy on their property, et cetera?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, this is something that this is a very difficult project. I think maybe the first thing to do is to call Cruz and just say, he's been around, he's been looking at septic systems, and just ask him, is he seeing a problem?
That's true. We can call Bob.
Yeah.
And we could ask him what his take is on all of this.
Yeah, do we have some kind of a problem
Yeah.
with septic systems?
Maybe it's onesies or twosies that are causing the
Yeah.
problem. Maybe it's
Yeah.
systemic. And we
Yep.
can, post-hurricane systemic, and we can ask him. I'm happy to call him, if you'd like me to.
Okay, do you want to call Cruz?
You're having a-
Yeah, I can call the owner. Yeah.
Sandy
Right.
looks like she keeps wanting to speak.
So let her.
Yes, okay. Well, I was going to suggest, because with all the sludge that came in as part of the stormwater, and it was just that muck and it was thick, and that settled on top of the drain field. And so it might be something as simple as, let's say you have a displaced homeowner, but before they can come in and put it back on the program with a rental agency, they just need to have their septic system assessed, make sure it's operating properly. And then I don't know when you talk with Bob, but it could be that if let's just say the pipes weren't hurt and the equipment, and most of us, I've replaced most of my equipment that got flooded already. And but maybe they could take that dirt off the top of the septic system and simply replace it with fresh dirt that hasn't been all saturated and mucked up. And I don't know whether the county would allow that, if they would consider, but I do know that the health department inspectors have been on all my properties, looked at everything commercially, but I don't think that they've necessarily done that residentially. But it's hard to mandate. How do you do that? That's the question.
Well, I think the first step is just to call, Cruz and
Yeah.
just say, he's out here all the time. If there's some kind of a large problem with our septic systems, I think he's going to probably know about it.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Can we get the health department to come look at individual homes?
They have been looking at individual homes.
Well, no, they look at non-conventional systems, Bruce.
Well, I know I just got a letter looking at mine, which is a performance-based treatment
Yeah,
system. So-
Right, there's a program for performance-based systems. Those are
Yeah.
routinely inspected and regulated.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That doesn't apply to conventional systems, and the vast majority of our systems are conventional.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just let us take the first step of calling Bob Cruz.
I agree. Yep.
And I think make sure we ask the question, Sandy's suggestion that maybe the sludge on top of the drain fields is causing a problem.
Well, I
Mhm.
just want to find out, do we have a problem? If we
Yeah.
do, Cruz is going to know about it.
We
Yeah.
obviously do have a problem,
No,
Jay.
we don't obviously have a problem. David sounds like he got 2 or 3 phone calls from people saying my septic system stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
I-
not exactly how I heard it, but okay.
Yeah, I can't say it's systemic. I can just say I have anecdotal evidence and I smelled it myself and I think people have.
And I can tell you the streets, but I don't know if it's one system or 5 systems or 10 systems. I just don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I still think Bob Walter's point is the most important one, which is it may be a hurricane related situation rather than a rising groundwater situation.
Exactly. I think Bob's point is very good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's take 5 minutes and then we'll rejoin and finish off our agenda. So everybody back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, him should be able to give you
Yeah.
some ideas of what he's saying.
I agree.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to go.
Okay, hopefully we are all back.
Yes.
Okay, Linda, the next 3 sections are yours.
So I did the wonderful handoff and I'm passing off the report on our hurricane meeting to Carrie. You're up, Carrie.
Okay.
Oh, well done, Linda.
So thanks.
It's wonderful.
So thanks, everybody. So basically, I'll give you a little recap of the Hurricane Ian debriefing that, again, I think I referenced it earlier, but it was a co-sponsored event between CEPD and the panel. It was held the evening of April 10th. Hold on, I just have my pages a little mixed up here. So just to tell you what happened there if you weren't in attendance. So essentially, it was a co-hosted Hurricane Ian debriefing. During the event, we heard about initial conditions and response from our fire and police. So we had Lieutenant TJ Klein was able to speak to us. And then we heard from Lieutenant Mike Sawicki. I think it also gave everybody an opportunity to, at least in that forum, for Captivans to extend their gratitude for the first responders. Other things that happened in that, I was able to give a brief overview of the physical conditions that affected the islands and Captiva during Hurricane Ian. And also to talk a little bit about the pieces that we do know and that we don't know.
Gary, it was my impression there were 75 to 100 people attending.
Right, I was going to get to that.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll give you the numbers in just a moment.
Okay.
So CEPD Executive Director Daniel Munt was able to discuss storm protection benefits of our dunes and beaches. He gave an update on some of the condition and the ongoing restoration plans, but of course, you continue to discuss that within these meetings as well. So you continue to have those updates. Linda presented a timeline of essentially how the response unfolded and gave some initial thoughts on what went well and where energy needs to be devoted for the future. And lastly, we used an interactive tool called Menti to gather community feedback. So in terms of numbers at this event, like Jay was alluding to, I think when I asked Ken, we estimated about 50 in person and about 20 online. So probably about 70, which is a great turnout. And we got we got a great deal of response on that Menti, that community survey in person, but we got a few additional responses by putting out that Google form that if you received the community panel updates, you would have seen a link to that. And also past updates have also included a video link to watch that presentation if you missed it. However, what I was able to do and what Linda would like me to report out on a little bit more for everybody is I was able to go through at the end of the week and at least do a starting sort of categorization of the data and pull out some of the key ideas and themes that people weighed in on. I will just mention briefly that there was a few questions I'm not going to get into too much today, but we did ask some questions around things like if folks were full-time residents, seasonal residents, what impacts look like for people. But I think the thing that Linda specified that is of makes the most sense to report out on today that would be of interest to you all is 3 questions we asked around that were more open-ended questions. The first was, in what ways was the post-hurricane response on Captiva effective? So the kinds of answers that came in for that. So let's see, many people thought first responders were excellent, with most referencing police and fire response specifically on Captiva. The level of communication was a common theme. Respondents made a lot of reference to communications that went out from the community panel. The city of Sanibel was mentioned. The Captiva Civic Association was mentioned. Also some reference to what was happening on social media groups like Facebook and I assume other groups like Nextdoor, avenues like that. The quick restoration of access to Captiva was important to people. Most people specified the causeway restoration, but there was one additional mention about clearing roads, which of course would be vegetation and likely sand removal. Other things that weren't mentioned as frequently, but still played a part in community feedback on this item was restoration of other services like mail service through the post office, availability of food through FEMA and some other local places, recovery of utilities like CenturyLink, water. A lot of folks really appreciated the general community response and sort of coming together of the community. And some people also highlighted the collaboration that occurred between organizations. And again, that sort of within community response. So that was question 4. I'll take a quick pause in case there's any questions anyone wants to pose, and then I can move on to what should be improved about post-hurricane response. Okay, no, I'll keep moving on the improvement part. So the question was, what should be improved about the post-hurricane response on Captiva? So there was quite a lot about restoration of telecommunications. Especially internet and phone service. So that was probably one of the most suggested improvements that figured into community response. There was some responses where they discussed communications, but it wasn't clear to me if that meant telecommunications or was more specific to the kinds of communications that were coming out of organizations. But there were a couple responses that got more specific to say, they suggested responses for the communications coming from different organizations post-storm. One person brought up
was my impression, the big negatives people had was the inability to communicate, using cell service, no cell service, and no internet service.
Yeah, you could really sum it up to that.
The biggest shortcoming of our response was how long it took to get those kinds of communications back up.
Yeah, I would say that figured in very heavily, and it was most specific to phone and internet. The way people talked about internet too was this sort of inability to work post-hurricane, kind of do the things that they needed to do. And sometimes I think that figured into some curfew issues too. The other, so just to kind of round that out, one person brought the idea of having more access to photos capturing the state of their home beyond just the aerial imagery. Other suggested improvements, again, these weren't as frequent, but they included beach cleanup, beach and utility resilience, which will come up again. We'll talk about a little bit more in the last question here, as far as specifics on that. Potentially information on rebuilding for homeowners, increased security, a better plan for mail delivery, stockpiling of supplies for first responders, ability to charge phones, and early island access options. So those are all the kind of wealth of ideas that came in around post-hurricane response. But Jay, you're right. The telecommunications was definitely a large theme there. Linda, do you want me to just move to the last question?
Yeah, go to the next, please.
Okay. Yeah, just checking to see how you like.
How you're doing,
everything. Okay, and then the last question was, what should the community panel and CEPD be working on to improve our future? So this is, I think, where sort of that resilience piece certainly comes in. So most respondents focused on actions that would provide Captiva longer-term resilience in a variety of ways. So several people suggested the need for resilience planning, which again, I know that this is something that Linda will talk about in a few minutes and sort of come back to. Several people suggested the need, or others advocated for restoration or other ways to obtain longer term beach and dune resilience. As Jay, I think both Jay and David mentioned this earlier in the meeting, but there were some answers specific to making utilities like power lines more resilient. Telecommunications came up again under this sort of future looking question, conversion from septic to sewer, better drainage, more engagement with new renters, better plans around debris removal, and then a couple last pieces for the idea of relationships, maintaining relationships with the county and state, and the updating and regular revisiting of emergency plans. And again, I need to proofread it a little bit, but I can go ahead and send this document to, for example, to Ken and to Jay and David, if you'd like to see. I may have sent this last week, but just so you have a record of everything. And I'll pass it off to Linda for what you would like to.
Thank you, Carrie. So we basically debriefed the community, and what we heard very strongly, I believe, was we have to figure out something better on telecom. That they were very pleased in general, or we were very pleased with the first responders, with the communications in terms of people talking to each other. And in general, people thought we all had done a good job. I think we're also getting support for resiliency plans going forward, resiliency actions going forward. That's my sort of takeaway. Anybody else have anything to add?
No.
Okay. So that was that part. Should I go to my next item?
Yep.
Thank you, Carrie. Vulnerability analysis update. So the CEPD has accepted the vulnerability analysis from Aptum. It is pretty similar to what we had from Integral. There's a few things that are different. One question I have for the panel is, should this be presented to the community or because we could do a high-level presentation of this through a Zoom meeting, which I originally thought we should do, but we have presented the other one earlier, and I don't know if it's useful to the community or not. So I was interested in people's opinions.
Is this the vulnerability analysis? Is that what you?
Yeah, that's where we look and see what's going underwater first and where the problem. So what it's basically saying, John, is we've got some road issues.
Yeah.
Flood in through the Bayside as we did in Ian. That's probably the highlights, if I remember. We have to worry about the Bayside. We have road issues. And there's some pumping station issues we may need to worry about.
Okay.
Linda, I think that, we've completed 3 vulnerability analyses of Captiva.
Yes.
The original one, done by Cheryl, then the one done by South Seas, and now the one done by Aptum.
Yes.
And I don't think you could present any one of them on its own. I think each one has its own, set of, strengths and weaknesses. But I think that if you could pull together a summary of the 3 and present it.
Okay, Jay.
That would be probably very useful, for the community. But
Okay.
I don't think you could just have Aptum come up there and, present theirs. It's not a format that I think most people can
Okay,
relate to. Now, I don't know if you want to take that on or not. I mean, that's,
I think I can do that. I'll have to work on it, but maybe we could target for early
all
fall when the people
people come
start.
back.
Okay, and I'll start
I
figuring
mean,
out.
I think we all know, we've gotten a good picture of what our vulnerabilities are
Mhm.
by, putting all three of the studies together.
Okay, I can handle that.
And I think if showed them inundation maps and so on and explained at 2 feet, here's all the issues we're gonna have, et cetera, that you could do that in a way that would make sense to people and they can understand it. But again, that's probably a pretty significant undertaking on your part.
Well,
Mhm.
I'll think about it and work on it because what else do I have to do while I look at the lake, right? Okay. Okay, so that's vulnerability analysis. The next step with this is to start to do a study as to what we need to do about it. We typically call this a phase 2 study. The CEPD would be sponsoring this. Our plan is to have a workshop to come up with a statement, RFP, something like an RFP, and put it out to vendors to bid upon. Daniel and Carrie are hopefully pulling this together within the next month or so. We will not have vendors in with us because if they are going to do it, then they can't bid on it. Aptum seems to be fine with this, as does the CEPD. So we have an approval to do that, and that's what we're going to be doing. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna have a work session to define all the deliverables we want from the study.
Exactly.
And then you're gonna do an RFP
Get it.
to get proposals from people.
Right, and we believe we're going to get we have $400,000 sort of right now in the state's budget for it. It could be vetoed, but that's what the plan forward is.
So would that be part of the direction we give to people, that our budget for this
No.
is 400, or we don't say that at all?
No, we say our budget is $10. What can they do? Okay. All right, but I think they all know the 400,000 anyway.
Okay.
I also understand that in Florida, we can't make decisions based upon how much people say, it's not a price decision. So it's a quality proposal decision, which I have to understand more about. If you're a government entity.
Okay, so there's a series of guidelines that we got to follow to do this properly. Is that correct?
Correct. And we're learning what they are.
Do you know when we'll have this meeting? Do you have any idea?
We're trying to have it in the next month or so.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like to attend that meeting when you get it, set.
Okay, Jay. So the issue is we would like to have, that would be lovely. Have it in person, except I'm up here. So we're going to figure this out. We'll figure it out. Yes, David.
Yeah, I have one question, and Tony, maybe you can help us with this one, Tony Laffey. My concern going forward is Santiva and the potential of flooding and washing out the road south of the bridge. It just seems so obvious that that's the weak point, and it's not on Captiva. So it's really not covered in any of our vulnerability analyses. Any three of them really don't deal with that area right south of the Blind Pass Bridge. And my understanding from the last CEPD meeting, not the last one, the one before that, is there's somebody from the county that's actually somebody working in Steve Patel's office that's actually
has a plan to fortify that area in the Santiva area by bringing in truckloads of sand, or there's a plan that's going to take place prior to the hurricane season. But we as a panel have never been advised or had any real discussion or presentation as to what that plan is, or how successful it'll be, or how comprehensive it is, et cetera. And I'm a little worried that we're focusing on everything on the north side of the Blind Pass Bridge, but we're really, as a panel, haven't never looked at anything in Santiva. And given what happened to the Twin Waters properties, and given you, even on a high tide, on a windy day, that water is splashing almost onto Captiva Drive. And so they have to have a pretty comprehensive plan to prevent that road from getting washed out if we have any significant storm. And so I like to bring in the guy, I don't remember his name, but I know he works with Steve Patel or someone, to present to the panel exactly what's happening down there so that we can feel confident that that is going to be covered.
David, I think you got a great idea, and I think the best thing to do is invite him maybe to the next meeting, because, you know, I've signed off on the ability for them to bring trucks in through our property to do that. And in conjunction with that, you know, when is the dredging of the Blind Pass scheduled next? So I think those two items together are the ones that are going to stabilize that end of the island. As you know, it's accreted quite a bit now compared to where it was earlier. Remember, we had the big cut and they were losing the parking lot and they were going to try to go. So, you know, as you know, water moves sand here and there, but they are scheduled to do something with the trucking, and they were going through a bunch of permitting processes. So I would suggest if you reach out to Steve Patel, to have him, somebody to come in maybe at our next meeting, give us a quick update and maybe a timeline on one, when are those trucks showing up, and two, what's the status with the dredging of the pass?
And
Yeah.
should Sanibel be there in the form of Joel or somebody beyond that?
Well, they'll be on it with Steve Patel. I'm sure he's working with the city of Sanibel as well.
Right.
I don't know if the city of Sanibel needs to be there. He knows what's going on with that. That's your call.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a county Sanibel project, but it's really one that has biggest impact on Captiva.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
And we sort of been we sort of not been part of that discussion at all.
Well, we're not responsible for Blind Pass.
No, I mean, CPD's not, but I think that the panel certainly has an interest in making sure that whatever they're doing is going to protect the.
Totally agree, totally agree.
And Steve would also be in charge, you know, when they talk about renourishment, you know, nourishing the beach of Captiva, that part of that's always clicked in with Sanibel as well. So Steve Patel would be the guy to really bring it all together, I think, if you want.
Okay, all right. So people want to maybe put this on the agenda for the.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, what's the plan for the Santiva area?
Yeah.
In Blind Pass.
Right.
Yeah. No.
So maybe we can set something up with Steve or and I forget the name of the individuals, McDowell or who's the person working?
Mike Campbell.
McBride or Campbell? McBride or Campbell?
Mike Campbell.
What is it?
There's a Mike Campbell. That's what he suggested.
Yeah, maybe it's Mike Campbell that was directly responsible for that Santiva area. And maybe we can just put them on the agenda for our June meeting and have a full discussion of how confident they are that what they're doing will protect our access to Captiva if there's a serious storm.
I'll reach out to Steve and set that up.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Please invite Joel as well at that point.
Okay.
Just a note, on that June meeting, I will be out of town, but I'll try to be on the phone for that meeting as well, okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Tony.
Okay,
No, and then this is sort of rolling into the next one as well. I don't have a lot to say on coming up with an overall plan. I think we'll work more on that. We'll talk more about that next month, but there is one issue that I wanted to talk about, which was telecom, and maybe that's when we get to your item, Jay. But in my experience, well, I used to be in telecom too. I think we need an overall telecom plan for the island, which is going to work in both emergency situations and better in general. And I don't think we can get it from one vendor. I think we may, and maybe it will be part of Resilient Lee, but I'm starting to think we need to hire a telecom consultant, whom I don't know who that is, to design something and help us then advocate for what we need to have for Captiva. I think a bunch of little Starlink session, that's probably not it. I think little Verizon towers may not be it. We may need to have dual links. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think we need somebody who knows telecom and communications to figure it out for us.
now are you talking about just cell phones, or are you talking about internet
I'm
also?
talking about telecom. So I'm talking about wireless. I'm talking about where does satellite fit in? I'm talking about where does landline, where landline may be the fiber optic cables. How does this all play together for us so that we have reliable communications in emergency situations and in general? And if we ask Verizon, they'll give us a Verizon specific. If we ask AT&T, they're going to give us an AT&T, and they may not, no one may put in satellite. We had to use satellite here. I may be overstating all of this. I may be being an alarmist here, but I think there may be elegant solutions with the technology available that if we knew what we wanted, we might be able to advocate for it. And we might be able to advocate with the PUC for it. Because even though we don't have universal service anymore, there must be service levels that these companies need to hit. And I don't know what it is anymore. So I thought we should hire somebody who knows something.
Well, I have no idea who that would be, but the other issue you have is you're working with multiple vendors.
Exactly. Exactly. And so how does one come up with if the panel's okay with this, I will go investigate to see if any of these kind of people exist and how one should do it. That's what I'll be glad to do that. I still know people in telecom.
Okay, well, yeah, I've got it. If you think such a thing exists,
there must be people who are willing to help. There must be. And even like what I heard from Ken was that he has a private service provider for their large area, which has probably more telephone service and telecom for his homeowners association, whatever, wherever he lives. And they provide it all, and they give very, very good service. Okay. I don't know how that plays in, is if we could throw out both, maybe we could throw out both, both Verizon and AT&T. I don't know what we can do.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
if you want to investigate and see if there is such a thing as there's somebody out there that can look at Captiva and say, if you want more reliability of communications and internet, here's what you might do.
Right.
Now,
And
based on what I know, given there's multiple vendors and all that, I don't see how you could do, one overall coordinated plan of action, but I don't know enough to know if what I just said is
you
true or
may be
not.
right, because when we opened up for competition, that's what happened with the multiple vendors. You may be right, or maybe there is stuff we can do. So I think we need to find out if.
Okay,
there's-
well, if you want to research that, that's absolutely fine with me, Linda.
Okay, I'll start talking to people I know.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Does
Look,
that cover everything, Linda, in your area, or?
Pardon? Yeah, that's
All right.
everything for me.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is Verizon. I received an update from Carrie Burrows about 2-3 weeks ago. Carrie is the project leader on improving Verizon service for Captiva. As you'll all recall, their plan was to establish 5 small cell, towers, which are towers about 40 feet high, throughout Captiva, 5 of these, one located approximately where the Civic Center is, one about where the firehouse is, and then 3 spaced along Captiva Drive. Carrie informs me that they have completed all of the permitting, including getting this permitted through the county. And the only permitting left to do is something he calls electrical permitting, which he says is a no-brainer. And they don't expect any issues with that. So he thinks all the permitting is going to be done in July. And then that's when they'll start ordering equipment. But he says they have a lot of supply chain issues. And he doesn't know at this time, when they might be able to get, all of their equipment together and actually begin, construction of the 5 small cell towers. So I guess it's big news that this got permitted through the county, without, any issues. I never received any calls or anything, so I guess the letter we wrote to the county supporting this project was enough for them to vote to go forward with the Verizon plan. So that's where we are in Verizon. Any questions on that, or? Okay. Next up, Captiva Drive revegetation. I think this is basically done. I don't know, who wants to summarize this? John, do you want to, or David? I don't know which one of you guys.
I think, Dave, I know you've talked to the county. Do you want to give the details, Dave? Do you mind?
No, I don't mind. The panel has sent out quite a few, 2 or 3 emails on this issue, and the panel also sent out a letters by snail mail to all the properties on Captiva Drive advising.
David, you might back up just for a minute and remind everybody what the plan is that we, came up with to solve the bike path issue.
Okay, under the Captiva code, which was passed and vetted a couple of years ago, there's a requirement of a 2-foot buffer beyond the paved area of the road on Captiva Drive, so that you have the shoulder or the bike lane, whatever you want to call it, on Captiva Drive. And their requirement of the code is to have a 2-foot buffer so that vegetation doesn't flow over onto the shoulder, making it dangerous for pedestrians and for bicyclists as they traverse Captiva Drive. And if there's vegetation, they'll be forced into the roadway. And so the county has, in discussion with the panel, because we had in the past talked about extending the bike lane, making a wider bike lane, 5 feet, 6 feet, whatever. We've chosen not to do that post-hurricane, but the county, working with the panel, will enforce, the panel's not doing it, but in discussions with the panel, the county will enforce that 2-foot buffer beyond the shoulder, so that that shoulder will stay clear so that it won't become a safety hazard. And so the county has agreed that they will, a number of times a year, come by and cut anything that is in the 2-foot buffer, so that the shoulder will always stay clear. The county will permit
sod or very low plants to be planted in the buffer, but anything that looks like it might come over, they don't even want low plants, but if they would have sod or shell in the buffer, so that that buffer is clear, so that we won't have a problem of any growth into the shoulder. And they will come by and they will cut. What they will do is they'll come by and cut anything on a regular basis that's in that 2-foot buffer. And if there's a tree there, they'll let the tree stand because it's a legacy tree. But other than that, they're going to keep that 2-foot buffer clear, except for sod or shell. What they don't want in that buffer are any rocks, lava stones, or anything that would, right touching that shoulder within that 2 feet, that would interfere with a bicyclist or a pedestrian. So they're going to come by and they're going to keep the buffer clear. Anybody who has rocks or plants or irrigation equipment in that buffer, they're going to send a certified letter to that homeowner telling them that they have to clear that buffer, and if they don't do it, the county will do it itself. And that way, the buffer will stay clear and the shoulder will stay clear. There are very, very few properties that are invading the shoulder at this point. Post-hurricane, nature took care of, Mother Nature took care of a lot of the problems that we had. So it's just a handful of properties that are basically violating the code, and the county is going to reach out to them and either have them clear that buffer, or the county will do it itself. And hopefully people who want to keep their properties nice will clear it themselves, because it'll look much nicer if the property owners do it with their landscapers, but if not, the county will do it. And that's where we are at this point. I think it's a good compromise. We're not extending the bicycle path. We're not cutting into people's landscaping. What we're doing is just maintaining what's in the existing land development code to permit a reasonable amount of pedestrian and bicyclist access along Captiva Drive.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And there are a couple homes in the village, just south of the village, that have rock, boulders right up to the bike path. And those homeowners have been, I think you talked to one, I talked to another, and they know what's happening. So like you say, it's advantageous for them to do it on their own. It'll be a better look probably than if the county does it. So
there's a property on the Twin Waters stretch just north of Ken and Bruce's property. I forgot the name of it, but the landscapers put irrigation right up to almost right at the shoulder, and then they put rocks right along the shoulder. I spoke to the landscaper as I happened to be going by when they were working on it, and I said, the county's not going to permit this. This you should not, violates the 2-foot buffer. And the landscaper didn't seem to be too concerned about it, because they thought the county would never come out and do anything about it. But I don't know if Ken or if Bruce, the owners right north of your properties, where you can't miss it. The rocks are right along the Twin Waters stretch. If you know the people, I forget the name of it. It looks like I don't know if it's a condominium association or something, but it's got a name right in front, and it's not a single house. And if you talk to them, I think maybe that's a better approach, and have their landscaper move those rocks back, and even the irrigation pipes that are right along the shoulder, so that they don't have the county doing it for them. I think it'd be in their interest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ken, you're on mute, Ken. Ken Gill, you're on mute. Ken Gill, if you're speaking, you're on mute. Still on mute. Bruce, I don't know if you're there, but maybe you know the property owners we're talking about here.
Okay, all right, David.
Yes.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Oh, you'll do it? Oh, okay. Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay, anything further on that items. Okay, wastewater committee. Wastewater project is in the phase now where Sanibel has to complete 2 studies. The first being, what are they going to do with all the additional effluent? When they partner with us and accept our wastewater. We've got a timetable for that study from Dana Sousa at Lake County. That study looks like it's supposed to be done in early June. So then we will know what kind of issues Sanibel will have with dealing with the increased processed effluent and what's going to be involved in them to get rid of that effluent. The next study is the economics study, which will begin as soon as this first study is completed. So that's where we are on wastewater. Hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months, we'll have all the inputs that we need from Sanibel, and we can start moving on to next steps for the study. I think, David, we're also going to have to resolve whether South Seas is in or out. It sounds like
They're in. Sounds like they're
in, but at least according to Kevin.
Yeah.
Which, fortunately, all of our planning to date, has included a scenario where they would be in. So it'll just be a matter of redoing numbers. I'm also afraid that with them being in, this will lead to another project, which is an evaluation of the current state of all of their, piping throughout, South Seas.
That's where Bob Wolf comes in. Start working on it now, Bob.
Okay, any questions on wastewater? Okay, next, Stormwater Committee. Linda, do you have anything to discuss there?
No, not, we're waiting for the proposal from Kimley Horn. No new news.
Okay.
And David said he's talking to her today.
I am.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So again, that's the $200,000 study to come up with a conceptual design for village stormwater man.
Yes.
Which has already been promised to be funded by the county.
By Kevin, right.
Yes.
Wow.
Is there anything further on iguanas?
No, Alfredo's still coming out every Tuesday. If anybody has an abundance of iguanas at their home and they'd like Alfredo to visit, he has a list of properties. But if anybody wants to get on the list, they can email Ken or the panel, and I can get that information to Alfredo. But he's doing good. He's still getting them.
Okay.
And if he keeps track of how many he gets every Tuesday. So if anybody would like that information, I can get it from Alfredo. So
does anybody have any feedback just in general on how the village and the community is feeling about iguanas right now?
I see them, but I don't see them as much as we saw them right before the hurricane. So it's Alfredo seems to be doing a good job.
Well, we also have, as I understand it, Bruce McDonald is a very accomplished iguana hunter. Bruce, can you want to go over the report?
Yeah, I've got about 50 this year.
50?
Yay, Bruce!
Yeah,
My backyard, Bruce, go there. 1 o'clock.
okay.
You might be-
Sunset Captiva, 1 o'clock.
you might be beating Alfredo.
Yeah. Well, that's all season. I started before Alfredo.
Ken, have we gotten reimbursed from the county yet?
No, we haven't.
Could you follow up on that and just see what the situation is? Otherwise, I'll intervene if you don't get.
Yeah, they were invoiced I think, right after the storm. And so it may have gotten lost in the shuffle. I'll follow up with it and see where it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Matt?
Okay, any other reports that anybody wants to make?
Nope.
Ken, how are our numbers looking?
You'll see a summary in the packet. Everything looks pretty good. We may want to look at some fundraising in the fall, depending on what our plans are, but for the time being, we're in good shape. And just as a follow-up to the fundraising that was done for Chief Powell, I've gotten a couple of those checks back from him because we never got waivers. So I'm going to be sending them back to the people who sent them,
Okay.
just so we close the loop on that.
All right. Well, maybe we should have an iguana hunt fundraiser.
Or a barbecue.
Yeah.
I think barbecue is great.
Hunt and barbecue.
If somebody would cook them who knows how, I would try eating them.
Oh, no, I don't think you want to eat them. I haven't heard.
Well, I think,
haven't heard good things.
don't they taste like chicken?
Yeah, they are. They taste like bald eagle.
Whoa. Okay. Anything else? Do we have any outstanding comments or questions from the audience?
We do not.
Anybody else from the panel have anything they'd like to say?
Nope.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
For a second.
I so move.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, see everybody next month. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.